In the movie, it starts with the Kim family, a South Korean family struggling with poverty in a poor neighborhood. We are welcomed to a place that seemed to be situated just below the street. A young guy appears, complaining that someone put a password on their Wi-Fi. A lady voice then answered, which seems to be his sister. A couple then is shown on the next part, looking like their parents, arguing about what they should do with their Wi-Fi concern. Ki-taek and Chung-suk, the patriarch and matriarch, are having trouble finding employment, and their children, Ki-woo and Ki-jung, are trying to help in whatever way they can. The young guy tries to search for a signal in their house with his right hand held high. He finally got it right inside of their comfort room together with his sister. Next part shows the four of them folding pizza boxes. However, their so-called boss complains of the boxes and how unpleasant it was folded. They still got paid, but then again had a 10% penalty from the reject boxes. After struggling to make ends meet folding pizza boxes for a local pizza restaurant, the Kims are visited by one of Ki-woo's wealthier friends, Min-hyuk, who offers to refer him to a job tutoring for a wealthy family, the Parks. Min-hyuk suddenly arrives with a gift saying it's a stone that brings wealth to families. While having a drink outside a convenience store, Min-hyuk told Ki-woo to take over him as English tutor on a high school sophomore student, Park Da-hye, as he will be studying abroad. Ki-woo doubts he'll get hired because he's not a college student, but Min-hyuk told him to fake it and assured him that he will have his recommendation. The next day, Ki-woo is recognized by his parents for having a job interview. He then went ahead on his way. He arrived in a luxurious, ravishing house and was amazed so much he could not keep himself from admiring everything he sees. Ki-woo was then introduced to the spacey and out-of-touch Mrs. Park by the housekeeper. He then met Mrs. Park, who shared her disposition by the sudden news of Min-hyuk studying abroad. She wanted a tutor who can do what Min-hyuk can do. That's why for Ki-woo's first session, he was joined by Mrs. Park as she wants to know how he runs his lessons. He meets Park Da-hye, the flirtatious teenager he will be tutoring. He then meets Park Da-song, her younger brother for whom Mrs. Park is trying to find an art tutor. Mrs. Park shared her despair on Da-song's behavior and how they struggle every day. She shared to him that no single art teacher lasts more than a month to Da-song. Seeing an opportunity to get his artistically talented sister, Ki-jung, a job, Ki-woo sets his sister up as Jessica, a classmate of her cousin who took up applied arts in Illinois State University who might be perfect for the job. Ki-jung gets the job after impressing Mrs. Park with some pseudo-insights about psychology, and Mrs. Park hires her as both a tutor and an art therapist for Da-song. Mr. Park arrives from work and meets Jessica. He then told his driver Yoon, to drive Jessica home. While the driver is preoccupied, Jessica removed her panty and intentionally left it in the car, planting a trap. On the way home, Mr. Park noticed the panty and thought his driver was having a sexual activity in his car. He then fired Yoon. When Jessica learned about this, he then set up his father to be the Park's new driver. However, there's still one person left, Moon Gwang. Living in Park family's beautiful mansion in the wealthy neighborhoods of South Korea, Moon Gwang has been living in the mansion as the architect's housekeeper since it was first built. When the architect sold the mansion to the Park family, Moon Gwang survived a change of ownership. She continued to live in the mansion, almost like the fifth family member to the Parks. So, the Kims set up a trap for her. When they learned she was allergic to peaches, a terrible idea came to their mind. They took advantage of her allergies to peaches and told Mrs. Park she has an active tuberculosis and is hiding it from them. Moon Gwang was then fired abruptly by Mrs. Park. Mrs. Park, who is clueless about housework, then contacts a number to get a membership which called The Care. Chung-sok then gets hired and starts her new work as the Park's new housekeeper. It's Da-song's birthday and the Parks are going to a camping, leaving the house empty. Mrs. Park left all her instructions to Chung-sok before they left. Meanwhile, the Kims enjoy their stay at the residence while the Park's family are away. They move in for the weekend and luxuriates. At night, they sat at the living room enjoying the scenic view, sipping alcohol while the rain pours outside. It's all fun and games, and while the Kims are enjoying the night, Moon-wang suddenly rings the doorbell and asks if she could get something at the basement as she forgot something there before she left. No matter what Chung-suk said to woo her away, she insists that she left something at the house. The rest of the family hides as Chung-suk lets her in, and Moon-wang reveals a bunker in the basement of the house, a lair that was installed by the architect who built it, and which even the Parks have no knowledge of. Chung-suk then found out Moon-wang's secret. Down in the basement is Gunesi, Moon-wang's husband. She has been hiding her husband there for 4 years from loan sharks. Moon-wang begs Chung-suk not to say anything to the Parks, but Chung-suk threatens to tell them and call the police. Suddenly, the Kims fall down the stairs of the bunker in a pile after listening in on the conversation. Realizing that they are all related, Moon-wang takes an incriminating video of them and threatens to send it to the Parks. A fight breaks out in the living room of the house. The telephone suddenly rang, getting the attention of everyone. The Park family is now on their way home as the campground's flooded from a rainstorm. The Kims get trapped in the house, hiding under the coffee table when the Parks arrive home. When Moon-wang tries to ascend the stairs and reveal herself, Chung-suk kicks her down, concussing and killing her. The Kims manage to get Moon-wang and her husband down into the bunker. The Kims family is stuck in the house, hiding, while the Parks family is also at home. But Da-song had other plans that night. He wanted to sleep in the yard in his tent, so Mr. and Mrs. Park has no choice but to sleep in the living room so that they can watch over him. When everyone is sleeping soundly, the Kims slowly exited the house and escaped the scene. But when they return home, they find their apartment completely flooded. Since it's been raining heavy, the Kims' house was swamped with water. Later that night, they were forced to sleep in an evacuation site. The next day, Mrs. Park decided to have an impromptu birthday party for Da-song. The next day, Mrs. Park calls each of them on Da-song's birthday party, which will take place on the yard. She invited Ki-jung and Ki-woo to the party. While everyone's busy for the party, Ki-woo had other plans. With the stone given to him by Min-hyuk, he slowly went to the basement. However, his plans was drawn away when Moon-wang's husband, Gunesi, caught him. Ki-woo tried to run away, but he got stuck by the metal wire on his neck. Gunesi then throws the rock on his head, leaving the floor soaked in Ki-woo's blood. Gunesi then emerges onto the lawn party, stabbing Ki-jung in the chest with a knife. When everyone saw it, there was a commotion. As Da-song feigns in fear, Mr. Park yells at Ki-taek to throw him the Mr. Park, despite the situation, showed his rudeness by covering his nose, scowling at Gunesi's smell while getting the car keys. This sets off Ki-taek, who stabs Park in the chest before running away and escaping. Time went by. Ki-woo wakes up in the hospital and learns about what happens. Ki-jung died. Ki-woo and his mother Chung-suk got on probation. The police, on the other hand, are still looking for Ki-taek, who is unheard of. He stands in the woods near the Park's house, which has been bought by Germans. He stayed there till night and observes that the sensor light is turning on and off in a pattern, Morse code. He translates the code and realizes that it is a message from his father. Ki-woo found out he was in the bunker all this time. He writes his own letter back, in which he dreams about buying the house for himself and reuniting his family. We then see Ki-woo, who plans to make money and buy the house to free his father. But this was all just in his head. In the last part, we are brought back to the reality of Ki-woo back in their old house, just as imprisoned as his father.